Recently, The Onion posted an article called "Before and After Airbrushing Image Alerts Fashion Industry to the Evils of Their Ways." And, of course, it's a sarcastic article because it's The Onion. And there's a link in the description, and the basic gist goes something like this. The fashion industry see before and after pictures, and they realize what monsters were damaging women's self-esteem, and cancel their fall line and donate their profits to charity to apologize to women everywhere for the damage that they've done. Now, of course, at this point, I think anyone with an internet connection is aware of the power of Photoshop to retouch and manipulate images and the impossible standards of beauty that can create. And some people might be offended by this sarcastic take on the issue from The Onion. I could definitely see people being offended by this. However, I have to say, in all honesty, that I think there's a kind of truth in this article, in their sarcasm. And that's because whenever I see these sorts of things about Photoshop and image retouching and impossible standards of beauty, they always fixate on the negative consequences of that, what it does to women's self-esteem. And of course, those are serious societal problems, but what seems to be almost taken for granted or not ever stated is that it's not an accident. The whole sarcasm and humor of this article is saying, somebody points this out to them and they realize, wow, what are we doing to people? This is horrible. We're going to stop. But the thing about the psychology of the advertisements is that they know damn well they're making you feel inadequate. In fact, that's the point. And that's what's really twisted and screwed up about all of this, which few people ever bother to emphasize or sometimes even to point out when they're talking about this. It almost seems as if, the way that it's always framed, it would seem as if they think, if you just, alert them to the evils of their ways, they'll stop. But the thing about advertising is that it's based on this kind of psychology whereby, you present something which makes the person feel like they're not pretty enough, they're not cool enough, they're not whatever enough. But if you buy our product, then you too can be beautiful, cool, everyone will like you, people will want to have sex with you, etc., etc. The way that the psychology, the advertising works, they're suggesting, no, you are not adequate the way you are, but if you buy what we have to offer, you will be. And I think what's interesting about this whole discussion is that part of the backlash, again, I think pretty much anyone with an internet connection at this point is aware of this issue. Part of it is, sort of feminist raising of consciousness, as they say, and part of it is just a cultural learning curve, like what was once sort of esoteric psychology known only by experts has become more and more, in the general sense, common knowledge, at least in its general outline. But also because with things like Photoshop, they have taken things so far that the psychology has begun to backfire. So with traditional analog techniques of airbrushing, so in the days of 35mm film, they might, for example, put a filter over the lens, a diffusion filter, which makes the skin look softer. And they might use literal airbrushing rather than digital airbrushing and that sort of thing. But there's only so far you could manipulate an image. Now with Photoshop, you can go so far as that what you create is essentially impossible. And so when you create an impossible standard, it removes the aspirational quality, right? So if you're selling a beauty product like a concealer or makeup or whatever, the person looking at the image has to look at it and say, okay, I don't look that good, but if I buy this product, maybe I could. When you've taken things to the point where they look at the image and say, I could never look like that, you've actually undermined the psychology on which the advertising is based, which is dumb. The whole point is to make them think, it's slightly better than they are now, and the answer to their sense of inadequacy is this product that you have to sell. But again, what I find so disturbing about a lot of this is that, again, it's not an accident. They know they're making you feel inadequate, and that's their whole strategy. And so pointing it out to them over and over and over really isn't going to get them to change all that much. That's not to say that if people, boycott them or whatever, you apply economic pressure and that sort of thing, those sorts of strategies can work, but in a general sense, they know damn well what they're doing. And you see this sort of tactics in, say, cults. Now, cults at least have the courtesy of love bombing you first before they break your will. Or the military, you go to basic training and they break you down only to rebuild you in their image. That's sort of the foundation of psychology. They want to, break your sense of self, put you down, and then rebuild you in their image, believing that you need X, Y, or Z product in order to be complete, or, to be cool, or to be attractive, or whatever. I should also briefly mention a TED Talk by a model in which she rightly points out that the images that you see in magazines are more than just a matter of Photoshop. There's also the whole production which goes into it, from the lighting to the hair and makeup and everything else, before the Photoshop even takes place. That's also important to bear in mind about these images. I actually think there are several ways in which our society is quite permissive towards people who scam and manipulate others for profit. Televangelists! But I'll save that for a separate video, so stay tuned for that, and have a nice day.